If you're watching the slide now, stop scrolling for a moment, because what I'm about to tell you will completely change the way you see Southeast Asia. Imagine a small, quiet, landlocked country, one that most global powers don't even monitor closely, suddenly creating a weapon in 2025 that is so inexpensive, so precise, and so unconventional that it has forced military analysts in Asia, Europe, and even Washington to reevaluate everything they thought they knew about modern warfare. This isn't a rumor. This isn't speculation. This is something that is happening right now, behind closed doors, inside a country that very few people expected to innovate at this level. And if you think Laos is too small, too poor, or too quiet to pull this off, then by the end of this video, you're going to rethink everything. The story begins with a question. What does a nation do when it cannot afford billion-dollar jets, massive naval fleets, or high-end missile systems like the US, China, or Russia? Some countries give up. Some rely heavily on allies. But Laos did something entirely different. Laos decided to innovate. They chose to take a path number one expected, build something small, inexpensive, but powerful enough to neutralize threats from much larger militaries. And what they created in 2025 has now become the topic of quiet conversations across ASEAN defense circles. But before we talk about the weapon, let's look at why this moment is so shocking. For decades, Laos stayed invisible in military affairs. No more major weapon programs. No more large defense budgets. No more aggressive ambitions. And that invisibility made the world think Laos was relevant in terms of defense technology. But behind that silence, something was happening. A new generation of Laotian engineers, trained locally and abroad, were returning home with big ideas. They wanted to prove that innovation isn't about money, it's about intelligence, strategy, and creativity. And they formed a small research team with one goal: build a weapon that could protect their country without bankrupting it. And here's the part that stunned everyone. Laos didn't waste time trying to copy Western or Chinese platforms. They didn't try to build fighter jets they couldn't maintain, tanks they couldn't fuel, or warships they couldn't afford. Instead, they studied the weaknesses of modern warfare. They looked at how drones, communication networks, sensors, and digital infrastructure shape today's conflicts. And they realized something brilliant. The fastest way to beat a stronger enemy is not by destroying their equipment, it's by disabling it. Suddenly, the strategy shifted. Laos didn't want a missile that costs millions. They wanted something that could paralyze enemy tech instantly. Something that even the US wouldn't expect from them. Something that could be mass-produced, deployed anywhere, and maintained on a small budget. That idea turned into a weapon the world is now paying serious attention to. Now imagine this. It's nearly silent. It doesn't rely on explosives. It doesn't need a huge launching system. It doesn't require a complex command center. And yet, in a demonstration early in 2025, it disabled 3 different types of surveillance drones, each equipped with advanced counter-jamming systems within seconds. No more smoke. No more flash. No more debris. Just instant shutdown. Observers from neighboring countries were stunned. They expected a small prototype. What they saw was a fully functioning, battle-ready system. And here's where things get even more unbelievable. The entire system costs less than what a single modern anti-air missile costs. That's why analysts keep calling it the low-cost disruptor. Not because it's cheap in quality, but because it's cheap in cost while delivering results that even high-end systems struggle to match. The genius behind Laos' weapon isn't the hardware, it's the software. It uses AI-driven targeting algorithms, adaptive waveform disruption, and predictive interference techniques that confuse, disable, and overwhelm enemy signals. This means it doesn't just block drones or sensors, it learns how to counter them. This is something Washington did not expect. The Pentagon, of course, monitors China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and occasionally Southeast Asian militaries like Vietnam or Singapore. But Laos, never considered a strategic innovator, never viewed as a military wildcard. So when intelligence reports surfaced quietly indicating that Laos had developed a low-cost electronic disruption weapon capable of disabling US designed drones or communication relays, analysts were shocked. How did this happen? How did Washington miss it? How did a country with one of the region's smallest defense budgets create something this advanced? The answer is simple but powerful. Laos focused on strategy over spectacle. See, big countries love showing strength through massive hardware, stealth jets, destroyers, missile systems. But these are expensive to operate and easy to detect. Laos chose the opposite. Their weapon doesn't look intimidating. It doesn't roar. It doesn't fire missiles. But it does what matters most. It levels the playing field. When an opponent cannot communicate, cannot see, cannot coordinate, and cannot deploy drones, it doesn't matter how big their military is. They are blind, they are vulnerable, they are powerless. And Laos found a way to create this effect with technology that costs less than a single armored vehicle tire. This is where the story gets even more interesting. The engineers who created the weapon aren't foreign contractors. They aren't retired experts from major powers. They are young Laotians who grew up with very little, who studied in small classrooms, who had to build prototypes using recycled parts before the government provided proper funding. These engineers believed that national defense shouldn't be limited by money. They believed that Laos deserved modern protection. And instead of copying foreign blueprints, they created their own. Their innovation became so successful that the demonstration video shown only to a small defense committee triggered panic among neighboring intelligence circles. Suddenly, Thailand upgraded its surveillance. Vietnam increased border monitoring. Even China quietly dispatched satellites to observe unusual activity near Laos testing facilities. So what exactly does this weapon do? Without giving away sensitive classified details, here's what you need to understand. It disrupts multiple systems simultaneously, including drones, communication towers, radar networks, navigation signals, and even small aircraft interfaces. It uses rapid synchronization pulses that adapt faster than typical countermeasures. And because the system is modular, it can be mounted almost anywhere on a track, a tower, a bunker, or even hidden inside civilian infrastructure. This flexibility makes it nearly impossible to destroy preemptively. And the craziest part, Laos can mass produce it. That's what scares analysts the most. Big countries rely on expensive, limited quantity weapons. Laos built something cheap, scalable, and extremely effective. If they wanted to, they could deploy dozens, maybe even hundreds across the country. A drone trying to enter Laotian airspace could be disabled before even crossing the border. A surveillance aircraft could lose all sensor data instantly. A communication relay could collapse without anyone firing a shot. This is the future of warfare. Disruption instead of destruction. Washington now faces a reality they didn't expect. If Laos can build this kind of weapon with such a small budget, what happens when other countries follow the same path? What happens when future conflicts are not fought with missiles, but with silent pulses that turn $1 million machines into useless metal? What happens when small nations no longer fear large militaries because they can shut down their systems without engaging in direct combat? This shift changes everything. It means the U.S. must rethink its strategies. It means high-tech equipment must evolve to resist new forms of disruption. And it means that in regions like Southeast Asia, smaller nations can finally achieve a level of defense independence they never had before. But beyond the technical side, there is a deeper emotional message behind the story. Laos didn't build this weapon to intimidate anyone. They didn't build it to become a regional bully. They built it to prove something to themselves, that even a small country can innovate at the highest level if it dares to dream, if it invests in its use, and if it refuses to accept limitations. This is why the project carries so much national pride. For Laotian engineers, this wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement. A declaration that Laos is not invisible. A declaration that intelligence doesn't belong only to superpowers. A declaration that small nations can stand their ground. This story is inspiring, powerful, and groundbreaking. And if you're watching this right now, you are witnessing the beginning of a new chapter in military history, one where David doesn't need a stone to challenge Goliath. He just needs innovation. Now he wants you to imagine a future scenario. A U.S. drone flies near Laos in a routine surveillance mission. Suddenly, without warning, its systems flicker, its sensors freeze, its navigation resets. The operator tries everything but nothing responds. The drone turns into dead weight in the sky. Not because of a missile, not because of hacking, but because of a silent pulse from a low-cost weapon built by a country most Americans can't even find on the map. This is the kind of capability Laos now possesses. And that's why Washington is paying attention. If you made it this far into the video, you clearly love deep hidden and told stories like the stories the mainstream media ignore, stories that reveal the truth behind global power shift, stories that open your eyes to the future of warfare. So before you watch another video, hit that subscribe button right now, because the next story we're working on will blow your mind even more. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. This was the rise of an unexpected innovator, the world's newest disruptor, and the story everybody will be talking about in the next few months. How Laos built a low-cost 2025 weapon at shocking Asia and Washington.